CSU is an equal opportunity access and non-discrimination university. We pride ourselves on helping out with accessibility and any other issues that you'd like to bring to our attention. So please don't hesitate to contact us should you have any questions or any needs that we can address for you. All right. So welcome to All Pueblo Grows' presentation for this month. Tonight we are doing Harvesting 101 and Fall Planting. I will be the first presenter, and I will have a secondary helper presenter tonight, and that would be Riley right here. She's one of my Master Gardener apprentices, and so she'll be taking over the second half of what we're covering. Before we get to the main meal, though, really quick, I like to go through some of these slides that chat a little bit about what All Pueblo Grows is. So All Pueblo Grows is a program that's supported by CSU Extension, Pueblo County Master Gardeners, and the Pueblo City County Library District. It's the program that provides the free seed libraries in our local branches and these classes on monthly basis to make sure that we're covering all those basics that everybody needs to know about growing their own food. So the mission and purpose of All Pueblo Grows is to grow a community of seed savers and successful food gardeners through education and free seed libraries. And that's what we're after, right? So if you are interested in participating in this program in any way, it's pretty easy to do. You have definitely a handful of options available to you. The first would be checking out seeds from some of those seed libraries that I mentioned before. So if you show up to one of the branches with your library card, you're welcome to pick up to 5 packets per visit, and we highly encourage you to do so. You are also welcome to come to these monthly classes, as all of you have, so thank you very much. And those will be going through usually September, possibly even into October this year from 6 to 7 p.m. here in this room this year. You are welcome to volunteer with us. You do not have to be a Master Gardener to volunteer. By all means, if you'd like to show up and help out with some seed packing or some outreach tables or whatever, just let me know. You can contact me there or find me at the Extension office. And then finally, utilize the seed swap table. So we really have a seed swap counter in the back. So if any of you would like to pick up any seeds, you are more than welcome to do so here at the end of the presentation. Just talk to any of our Master Gardeners in the room and they can help you figure out how to do that and how to make sure you're getting them home. Okay. All right, for the seed swap table, like I said, I'm not going to go through all of these points for everybody, but please do ask a Master Gardener. They'll hook you up with envelopes or let you know what's best to use as far as sizes of spoons, that sort of thing, and you'll be able to write on your packets what you've got and what to expect out of them. As far as expecting goes, for today, what we're going to do is pretty quickly launch into our main topic. As far as questions, I'm happy to accept them should they deal with what we're talking about right then and there. If they're a little off course, by all means, hang on to those questions. We're happy to answer them at the end. Or if you really want to wait until kind of everything's done or it occurs to you a little bit later, pull me aside or any of the Master Gardeners in the room. We're happy to help you or find the answer eventually if we don't know right off the top of our heads. All right, other Master Gardeners in the room, would you mind raising your hands just so everybody knows? We've got a healthy population in here, so they will be around in order, like I said, to answer questions. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What is succession planting in and of itself? So this basically just boils down to it being a gardening technique. It's one more way to find success with gardening because it's going to allow you to be able to reap more produce throughout the season. You're extending that growing season. You're extending the amounts that you can grow through strategic planting throughout the growing season itself. So it's going to provide a more continuous and extended harvest for you because what you're doing is you're basically taking spots that were devoted to other crops earlier in the season and then having a plan for those for other crops that can take their place later on. So the key to this is understanding when your chosen crops grow best and when they are harvested, okay? So you're going to want to start with your earliest crops and plan for what's going to replace them. This right here is an example of a planting plan that's just on one of CSU's websites. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's an option that kind of gives you that visual of what you can do at home. This is January, February work, guys. So when you're sitting there thinking about all the green things that you're going to be able to grow, map out your space and then start filling in. What is that? What am I going to be able to put in here? What conditions does this plant need? That sort of thing. And as you start to plot things in there, you can also think about, well, can I follow up with something else? What else would succeed next to this? And a lot of things that are going to come into play with that is the considerations of the space, the neighbors, and the exposure. So when you go to consider your crops, you want to first think about, all right, is there enough space for what I'm putting in? Let's say I'm going to put in peas early in the season. They're going to be vertical climbers, right? But then they're going to be done. When it gets hot, they get crusty, they get gross, they're done. I don't want to eat them anymore, they're bitter. So we can yank those out, and maybe they didn't take up a lot of space, but they took up a vertical space. Well, what else could take up a vertical space? Can I grow cucumbers up in that same spot? Probably. If those peas come out in time, you can absolutely put cucumbers there. And that's just an example. We have plenty of things that you're going to be able to switch out if you want to do that. When I say neighbors, who is this crop going to be growing next to? Maybe early on in the season, you've got stuff in place and everything's fine and happy dandy. But then later on, some stuff grows taller. And when you go to plant that succession crop, suddenly that tall stuff is shading that area. And you realize, well, when I'm going to put those seeds in, it's going to be too shady to get good germination there. Or those seedlings are going to struggle because they're just not getting that full 6 hours of sunlight. So you're going to want to keep in mind who's close by. Do you have pumpkins that are going to try to eat your successive crop? Things like that. And then finally, the exposure. Yes, to shade, but also to wind, that sort of thing. Make sure that the area that you're going to be planting in is going to be something that's going to let little tiny seedlings that are already putting up with the strong heat of summer succeed. Okay, so when we're talking about doing succession planting, generally, especially here in Pueblo, the timeline for that is going to be mid-July to like early August. So when you go to put stuff in, it's going to be things, like I said, that are more cool season items. You see here, we've got Swiss chard, kale, and spinach. Those guys are going to go in late August to September. Beets you can put in late summer sowings. You want to make sure, though, you're working backwards for beets. A lot of these things work backwards so that you're guaranteed to get that timeline right. You don't want to be stressing as maybe the first possible frost is breathing down your neck. So for beets, like I said, 10 weeks before the first expected fall frost, put those guys in. Then for cabbage, you're going to want to sow that directly in the garden about July 15th for a fall crop. A lot of these, like I said, are going to be mid-July. But sometimes you can help yourself out, like they say here. Put like late variety cabbages in. Choose things that are supposed to do well in heat, because as they're growing up as little tiny babies, they're going to be in that mid-July, August heat. And we all know that in September, we often hit 90 degrees, right? That's not rare. So know your crops. Choose wisely. There's so many varieties out there, guys, that you can find ones that are supposed to do better with that intensity. Carrots, a fall crop, can be sown in August in many locations to be left in the ground, well mulched, and used over the winter. So for these guys, we were just chatting about carrots earlier. If they're really dragging their feet and not coming to maturity, you can kind of mulch them in and see if maybe you can bring them in through to late fall, even into winter. As long as you're mulching deep around them, you're going to protect the crowns of those plants, which is going to give them the opportunity to still be able to survive in there, thrive in there without turning too bitter. That's what you're trying to avoid. If you leave carrots too long, they'll get really tough, fibrous-y, and kind of bitter. So mulch them in good and then give it a shot. See how it turns out for you. For cauliflower, you can sow the seeds outdoors in late July for a late fall crop. So they should be ready, say, late September. And then for lettuce, plant again in late August for a fall crop. Peas are going to be very similar. Radishes, these guys are shorter, right? They generally have a shorter growth time. And that's really nice because it gives you a little bit of flex room. So for radishes, maybe you'll get a few sets of those in. So time those well, but even if you don't time it just perfect and you know that frost is coming, just snip off the greens and throw those in a salad. Like you can write off the plants overall, but take what you can. Little radish seedlings are often used for sprouts, and why not? Those will still be delicious. And then finally, we have garlic, one of those classic fall crops that you can put in. And those will go in late September to early October. They will not get harvested until the following year. So once you get them in, work is done for a while, and that's really nice too. Okay, so you've gone through all this work. You've planned out what you want to put in the garden. You've thought about timelines. You've got everything in. You've got everything watered. Things are doing okay, but you're worried. Frost is coming no matter what. How do you plan ahead to make sure that you're going to get some success? You look at that through the lens of season extension, basically. What you're doing is hedging your bets. You're trying to help yourself out here. And so some of the things that you can do from the get-go, planning in January, site your garden on a south-facing slope. If you do that, you're going to have that area exposed to more sun, which is also going to be more warmth. It's going to warm up faster and cool down slower, which means you're going to have more growth happening over there. You can provide wind breaks. If you do that, that's going to keep that temperature around those seeds a little bit warmer rather than having all that warmed air whooshed away by the wind over time, right? You're creating some bubble around your babies. Let's put it that way. Then we've got raised beds. That's another one that allows you a lot more control over what you're putting in. So raised beds affords you the option of being able to make something like this, which is a cold frame, where you can put something clear over the top of your box over the winter months. It still maintains some warmth, oftentimes enough to even keep lettuces going through a big chunk of that winter time. So that will help you extend the season and possibly even use it for some winter growing. You can also attach framing onto your raised beds like they have here and put row covers on, plastic on, things like that to help protect those crops. Underneath that coverage, they can expect to stay 10 degrees warmer, which for a lot of us, when those frosts first start, that's all we need. Maybe it's just dipping down a few degrees too far. These guys could bring us weeks and weeks further into the season, which is really nice. And then you've got things like walls of water, different plastic sheeting that you can put down. Those are also good options to kind of get you a little bit more time as things are just starting to ripen. But gosh, you'd really like it to get a little bit bigger or a little bit redder, that sort of thing. And then finally, of course, there's greenhouses. If you're lucky enough to have a greenhouse, by all means use it. If you do have one of those and you're kind of planting on a fall succession kind of situation, you want to also maybe incorporate more containers so that, you can move things in and out of that greenhouse. It makes life a little bit easier. Extra points for putting little rollers on the bottom of your saucers, put something under there that you can just roll them all around. Okay, before we move on to harvesting, does anybody have questions about succession planting? It sounds intense, but all it is good planning. In the end, it's just taking the time to plan out, what do I want to make sure I'm going to be able to grow? What's worth my time to grow? Don't grow stuff just because you can. If you think you're going to eat it, if you think you're going to have time to harvest it, if you think you're going to have time to store it and preserve it, go for it by all means. But otherwise, don't put yourself to the trouble. Know what your goals are, plan them out early, and then that way you're ready to go when it is time to go. Because it is awfully hard to muster up some excitement come mid-July. We're all sweaty and tired of being out there, and the mosquitoes are relentless, right? So if we're going to put stuff in the ground, it better be worth it. Yes, Mary?
So I'm a new vegetable gardener this year, and for the succession planning, would it be a good idea, like in mid-July, if I wanted to do lettuce again, to put it someplace where it gets some shade from the
Yes. Absolutely. So like I said, know your exposure. Yeah, lettuce is definitely going to benefit from that. Spinach is going to benefit from that. A lot of those cool season, they will just shrivel up and wish for death until it finds them, if they're out there in that exposed heat. People will also utilize shade cloths, even sometimes for tomatoes, because our sun is so intense here by midsummer. Sometimes our tomatoes get so overwhelmed by it, they stop producing fruit or they don't ripen up. You got to give them some of that afternoon shade. So if you're seeing that even in some of your sun lovers, just know I'm a Puebloan. So are my plants. We have to make some exceptions and do some things, and that's okay. Yeah.
So what causes the lettuces to bolt? Is it the heat or the sun or both?
I do not know specifically. I can't say for sure. I think it's the heat. Because I think it's the heat, because if you can grow them in a cool place still, but you're getting those long hours, I think they still do very well. It's too hot. It signals their cellular structures that we're done here. We better make some seeds because otherwise we're going to die soon, So that's what they're after. All right, time to harvest then. We're going to move on. If you think of other questions, save them till the end. I'm happy to answer them. Okay. I don't know why that came out that way. How interesting. Anyway, when you guys go to plan for your harvest, I do want you to think first and foremost, like we kind of mentioned before, how important it is to plan ahead. Plan to grow the things you actually want to eat. Plan to grow them in the amounts that you can handle so that you're not overcome by guilt. Plan them also, maybe I want a little extra, or maybe I love zucchini, but gosh, I don't want to eat 20 pounds of it. So think in mind, who can I pass this off to? Who can I gift some of my extra produce to? And maybe you can even find somewhere that you can donate it to. So I just encourage everybody to do that. On this slide really quick, that QR code does bring you to, this is not where we're headed here. Hold on. That QR code does bring you to our Grow and Give site. That is something that CSU put together during the coronavirus epidemic, if you will, when everybody was not getting out, everybody kind of wanted to grow their own food. And it's a really excellent resource because it has all of these different growing basics out there for you. For all of us vegetable gardeners who are getting started, it gives you information from soil all the way to harvest, and you get everything in between there. So if you're trying to figure out where to start, that's a great place. You can kind of click on the topics and explore further. Okay. So let's talk about supplies for harvesting first, because this is kind of where it starts. Things are starting to look awesome out there in the garden. You're getting all excited. Oh man, they're peeking out, the red tomatoes, things are looking good. So when it comes to harvest time, once again, the planning organized gardener is the most successful one. And that hurts some of our souls because that's not who we all are, but it makes our lives a lot easier. So when you go to harvest, you're going to want to make sure you've got a plan. And part of that plan is gathering up the supplies, right? I put gloves on here. That seems like a no-brainer. But honestly, how many of us go out to the garden just for a little walkabout and then we start picking and pulling and digging things? And then before you know it, you got, a sticker stuck here and dirt under your fingernails. So maybe just have the gloves close by the back door or whatever it's going to take. But pack the gloves in when you're actually headed out to harvest. That's one of those things. Then we've got snips. I don't care what you use. Doesn't make any difference as long as they're sharp. So you can use these with the more narrow blades here, or you can use some of these guys, the hand pruners. As long as they have a good sharp blade on them, that's what you want to use to actually remove a lot of your produce from your plants. Yes, some of them pop right off. Some of you got to just do a little tear and they come off. But what you're doing by using the snips or the pruners is creating a nice clean cut. So you're keeping that cellular structure as intact as possible, and it's creating a place where the plant can heal itself a lot easier. If it can do that, then it's less likely that you're going to have pathogens and things sneaking in there and possibly creating issues for you down the road, even with your plant. It's just one of those safe and careful things to do. Then a trowel or a fork, that's for any of your root vegetables. If you're going to dig those out, bring those with you. Know ahead of time, you got to go gentle and slow, because if you pierce any of those root vegetables, you've opened up a wound on them. They could get rot after that. So do your best. All of us end up snagging something from time to time. Be nice to yourself, but that's what you're shooting for. When you go to plant those, try to plant them in loose material, though. That helps a lot when it comes to harvesting time. Then we want a bucket or vase of cool water. So what are we going to use this one for? This kind of stuff is used for flower harvesting and for greens mostly. That nice cool water is going to keep the flowers hydrated while you're out there. As soon as you cut them, they are going to be losing vigor. Let's put it that way. And so if you can pop them right into water right away, that's excellent. Keeps them cooler. And then you can transport them in once you've collected everybody that you're after in the garden. Same thing with your greens a lot of times. Then we have the basket, hod, tub, whatever. Anything that beats doing, this. Oh, I'll make a little, I got this. I'll put them in here and they won't fall out. It'll be great. Because boy, do I do that too often. So as long as you got something out there that you can kind of collect in, bring them all in, that they're not piled on top of each other so deep that they're starting to bruise each other, that sort of thing. Make sure you're grabbing something that can take all that you have an eye for. Let's put it that way. And then finally, flower preservatives. So that's what these guys are. And you just add them to the water that you finally put those bouquets in. And yes, sometimes it feels like it's a joke when you get those with your bouquets, in the grocery store, but actually these guys work. So, you can order these off of places like Amazon and that sort of thing. And if you add a little bit in there, it's going to preserve those flowers a little bit longer for you. So it's worth having if you are a flower gardener and that's something that you like to do, is bringing them inside and creating bouquets with them. Absolutely invest if you can. Oh, and then finally, the last thing on there, the clock. You have to make sure you give yourself the time to go do it, right? If you're trying to hustle because dinner's cooking and you just came out to grab a tomato and then you're kind of, I'll grab a little basil and I need to grab this for tomorrow. And give yourself the time to go out there. That means you're actually going to be taking the time to do it right. It means that you're going to be able to pick things that are important and look good. You're going to find stuff that's important, like, oh, that doesn't look good. Should I remove that? Is that powdery mildew? Do I need to snip this off? Are the ants taking over there? You're going to get distracted out there. It's very easy to do. So be kind to yourself. Give yourself the time to go out and enjoy your garden while you harvest. You'll be happier. You'll be more relaxed. And as you'll see, you're going to be able to enjoy that produce more because you'll take care of it better. And that brings us to best practices. So much like with the gardening and planning those successive plantings, you want to have a plan for the harvesting. You want to have a plan for what you're going to do with it directly after harvest, but eventually as well. So, all right, you go out, you collect it all, you bring it all in. And then what? Maybe you were planning on preserving right then and there, right? Make sure if you're going to be doing some canning that day that you've got the pectin, you've got the sugar, you've got the jars, everything's prepared, you know. If you're going to be pickling, do you have all of your spices? Do you have the salt that you're going to need? Do you have the jars for it? So on and so forth. If you can make sure that you've got all this stuff waiting for you inside, all the way down to colander, veggie scrub brush, towel laid out, think about how much easier that's going to be. How much more you're going to enjoy being able to just, oh, here we go. And then this, and we got that done. And now I'm going to store it like that, and we're good to go. You're much more likely to keep that stuff looking good and edible longer. So do yourself the favor, get all that stuff collected, set it all out nice, have a plan in your mind. Is this stuff going to get frozen? Is this stuff going to get dehydrated? Set that stuff up. For the next thing, find good and safe recipes beforehand. So if you're planning on preserving stuff, absolutely ensure that what you're going to do with it is something that is not going to pay you back with something like botulism, right? Nobody wants that. So guys, right here is our Preserve Smart website that CSU has put together, and this QR code will take you there. And it's awesome. What they created is basically a website where you can just pick something by the type of vegetable or crop that you've got, and then it takes you instantly to all the safety measures that you can put into place. It takes you to recipes that have been proven as far as like times and temperatures to be absolutely safe, get rid of any pathogens that you'd have to worry about. And so it's an excellent way to get those recipes quick, knowing that they're going to be safe and that you can just move forward with them. Okay. Then you want to start off with clean tools and a way to clean out in the yard. So that kind of brings us back to those snips I was talking about. If you're hopping from plant to plant with your snips, it's not a bad idea to take out like a Clorox wipe with you and wipe in between plants. That way, if somebody's got something funky starting that you can't see, but it could be spread, you're helping to reduce the chances of that happening. Also, if you end up, you accidentally drop the snips in the dirt, you're picking up some of those soil pathogens. Wipe them off real good and then carry on. It just makes life a little bit easier. You're doing your plants a service. If you're going to be doing some wild harvesting or even some pruning out there, maybe take out a bucket with some diluted bleach water. You could do 1 tablespoon of bleach per 2 gallons of water. Dip stuff in there for a good 10 seconds and then wave it around, let it dry a touch, and you're good to go again. Yeah. I would use bleach. That's what they recommend. Yeah. And then finally, you're going to want to wash the veg. I know some of this seems so obvious, right? But we all get busy or we all get forgetful or things get distracted. So wash your vegetables as soon as they come in. Scrub the dickens out of your root vegetables. Be sure to wash and rinse into the crevices and wrinkles and leaves. Remove any damaged part of the veg before storing. Now, this is when you have a storage plan in mind, right? That you're going to be storing, say, in the freezer or cutting up and putting in the fridge, that sort of thing. If it's one of our winter crops that you're going to be storing for maybe months on end, that falls into a completely different category. Some of those you don't want to wash right away. Some of those you need to dust off and you need to let them cure, that sort of thing. And so that will be more specific to the type of crop that you're trying to save over long periods of time. But this, what we're addressing here, is about something that's much sooner. Like I said, you're planning on eating it or saving it right then and there in form of canning, dehydrating, all that sort of thing. All right. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I covered so far? Riley's about to take over for me and kind of start discussing specific vegetables and how that harvesting works.
Do you recommend leeks for succession planning?
No, leeks actually take a really long time. And so they are not one of those that's a good one for succession planting. Their growth period, their season is too long. So that's why they don't fall into that. Yeah.
You mentioned powder mildew.
Yeah.
How do you fight that?
Unfortunately, it's one of those that's very tough to fight because what it does is it overwinters like in the soil and it hangs out and it just doesn't do much for early spring usually. And then it starts to kind of come back as summer wears on. And so you can take out the plant material, but you're really not going to get rid of it. The good thing about powdery mildew is it doesn't actually really harm the plants. It's not going to kill your plants off. It's just kind of an eyesore. It doesn't look real great out there. So if you're really, really after getting rid of it, get rid of the plant material and clean up the ground. You're going to pull up any and all leaf litter, that sort of thing. Maybe even a little bit of the soil if you really have to, that sort of thing, if you're really, really trying to eradicate it. As far as sprays and that sort of thing goes for it, Master Gardeners, have you guys come across anything that you like to use? Yeah. Is it like a powder that goes on? Gotcha.
I think it depends how much you have and how early you get it.
I've had it on zucchini.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I would just snip off the leaves at some point because it was just.
Yeah. And that's okay. When it gets out of hand and you're like, can we just not spread all over everything? You can snip it off and that's okay. Usually the plants by that time are a good enough size. They can handle that sort of pruning.
You did container gardening
Mhm.
with zucchini and some squash and stuff like that. Would that
Reduce your chances of getting
yes,
it.
Thank you for giving that vocabulary word.
Depends on where it's located in the yard. If it's near an area that has had it before and those plants are starting to develop it, like I always get it on my zinnias. That's a flower bed, I'll get it on my crops like zucchini and pumpkin, things like that. So if your container is near those and it happens to, what'll happen a lot of times is if it's like near shade in the afternoon, I tend to get it more. If it's in an area where there's overhead sprinkling happening a lot, I'll get it more. So it kind of depends on where it's located, but I would say it's much less likely to get it in a container because you're not dealing with the same old soil. So that could be a way to bypass it for a couple years.
Like it says neem oil also is effective.
They want to put neem oil on everything. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. You can try it, but yeah, I don't have personal experience. Yeah. So that's, yeah. Yeah. If you're in a yard, right, where it's just driving you nuts, do something. Yeah. And you don't have to feel bad about it. Gardening isn't all about guilt. Let's not do that to ourselves, right? It's too easy. Okay. Anybody have any other questions before Riley takes over for me? Okay. Miss Riley, come on up. I'll get out of your way here.
Thank you, Amanda.
Of course.
Hello, everyone. Now that we have our tools ready and a plan to help guide us, let's dive into some specific veggies. Let's start off with our tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and the like. It's best to harvest when these guys are firm and fully colored. We want to let them ripen fully on the vine unless we're at the end of the season and we're just hoping to get them off before they freeze or something. As Amanda said, it's best to use snips rather than just pulling them to prevent any unnecessary damage. The clean cuts tend to heal better than a pull or a snag. Our tomatoes can be stored in a cool, dark place to slow down ripening. And depending on the crop, peppers can be harvested either when they're green, which means that they're still immature, but they're at a pretty good size, or once the color begins to develop with our oranges. Just be mindful that if you want the fruit to go to a mature color, you will need an additional 3 weeks or so for them to get to that color. Next, we have our lettuce, kale, collards, chards, and leafy greens. Hand clip about an inch above the soil and handle as little as possible. These guys are delicate and can wilt easily. Leaf lettuce can be productive for a long period of time if outer leaves are picked, leaving the inner leaves to mature. We want to wash these in cold water and make sure that they are dried pretty well with a salad spinner. For the best storage, it's around 32 to 35 degrees with a 98 to 100% relative humidity. We want to keep maybe a moist but not soggy paper towel to provide some moisture if we don't have like a cooler with a humidifier and that type of setup, which is hard to do sometimes. Kale and collard greens can be picked from individual leaves from the main plant, and for peak freshness, make sure to harvest in morning before it gets too hot. We don't want to harvest for ourselves and the plants in the peak of the heat, and also get it cooled quickly. And this is when it's nice to have our basin or bowl. Sorry, thank you for saying something. For peak freshness, make sure to harvest in the morning before it gets too hot for both your benefit and the plant's benefit. And this is nice when we have a bucket or a bowl, a basin of cool water that we can put directly the leaves in so they don't wilt. Next, onto our beets, carrots, radishes, and other root veggies. These plants are one and done, meaning once they are harvested, we will need to reseed them and start the process all over again for the growth. Should we wash these before storing? A bit of dirt is okay. If they're muddy, they can be gently washed. Make sure that they are air dried. We don't want them wet before storage, or else we will get storage rot, and we don't want that to set in. Our radishes, beets, and carrots should be stored in the refrigerator up to 2 weeks, but not by apples, because apples emit ethylene, which can just encourage the aging process in these guys. And for potatoes, after digging them, allow the tubers, which are just the stems growing out from the potatoes, they're not roots, to further curb by storing them in a dark but well-ventilated area at a cool room temperature, ideally 60 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, for a few days or 2 weeks. Harvesting our herbs. We can begin harvesting the herb when the plant has enough foliage to maintain growth. Up to 75% of the current season's growth can be harvested at one time. This is for our annuals like basil and cilantro, not our perennials like rosemary and mint. Once again, we want to harvest early in the morning after the dew dries, but before the heat of the day. Harvest them before flowering, otherwise the leaf production declines, and that is what we're using. Herb flowers have their most intense oil concentration and flavor when harvested after the flower buds appear, but before they open, so it's a delicate time frame to get that. Our annual herbs can be harvested until frost, and our perennial herbs can be clipped until late August. We should stop harvesting these guys about 1 month before the frost date. Late pruning could encourage tender growth and cannot harden off before winter.
Can I ask a question? So the herb flowers, so that's using herb flowers as the edible component? So herb flowers have the most intense oil concentration and flavor when harvested after flower buds appear but before they open. So what are examples?
So for something like that, what you're looking at is probably more like chives. You know, like people like to cut those up and put them in things and stuff like that as they start to. I honestly wouldn't want to chew on a chive that hasn't opened up. I mean, that seems kind of unpleasant to me. So I mean, to your own. But maybe you could throw thyme flowers into things, stuff like that. We don't really get rosemary that flowers here. We're not lucky enough for that. But if you want to use lavender in some of your baked goods, that could be the situation. So things like that, but also for the most intense oil concentration, that may also apply to the actual plants themselves. So I would take it both ways.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. And harvesting flowers. We want to harvest flowers during the coolest part of the day. We select blooms that are half to 3/4 open, and we want to avoid blooms that are shriveling, faded, curling, or falling off. Avoid peak bloom time. Once again, we want to carry a bucket of cool water to place the stems in once we clip them and keep them in shade. We have our snips here again to use a sharp, clean pair of scissors or snips to make a smooth, even cut. And you could cut at a bit of an angle to increase surface area for water intake. You can cut long stems 5 to 18 inches long, several inches longer than needed. Remove foliage below the water line. Any foliage left in the water causes bacteria to grow and will make your water cloudy. You can recut stems at an angle before placing in the vase. Consider using flowers and foliage from trees and shrubs for filler and greenery. Keep stems in water while designing your bouquet, which this is a nice infographic on how to design a beautiful bouquet. And you could use the floral preservatives that Amanda showed a few slides ago to help prolong your flower life. And maybe we change the water every 1 to 2 days and cut the stems again to preserve life as well.
Yeah, I found that normally helps a lot as far as keeping them happy longer. And then apologies for the slides, guys. They did look normal on my computer, so I don't know why there's some overcross there, but Yeah, absolutely. And then, like it says, give yourself a little extra to work with. So when you cut those stems, cut them as long as you can. And you do want to cut back to that next set of leaves, on the flower. Don't just cut to where you're like, that's a good amount for my stem to go inside, forgetting what's left behind. Cut down to that next set of leaves. That gives the plant the ability that it's not still maintaining that chunk of stem that's up there doing nothing, because it's not going to put out any new leaf nodes there necessarily. It's going to work from those leaves that are down below it. So cut that chunk of stem off, then it's not maintaining that cellular structure or anything, and it can keep going from there. So when you harvest, keep that in mind. Anything else?
I think
You want to talk about that?
our next class.
Has anyone tried ikebana? So I'm so bad at arranging flowers, they look hideous, it stinks in a day. So I bought this thing, it's this little bowl and it has like a little wire thing. And I just pick like 4 flowers in and you shove them in the wires that hold them up and put a little water in and they're beautiful and it's like way less overwhelming than that.
I have one of those.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah,
It's like a little
Isn't that the Japanese art of flower?
It is, yeah.
So it's that little round thing and it's got spikes.
Yeah,
in it.
exactly.
Those are stems on here.
Frogs, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if
Okay.
regular, because I love flowers, but I would get so angry and they stink in a day. So try ikebana if you want.
Certain flowers will go bad on you versus other flowers that stay better.
Yeah.
And their leaves, like I try and get as many of the leaves out versus what's coming out this way. Because then that's what's gonna degrade your water and eventually get mold in the stench.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of
Yeah.
the.
Try to strip all the leaves off that you can, remove them in there. Recut every couple days, change your water out every day to every other day, that's good.
and you'll find like, some flowers just are like yarrow. And other things are just meant to stay outside.
Yeah.
They have a hollow, they're hollow, and a lot of flowers just will sometimes just,
It's true, not everybody is a
not
cutting
everybody
flower.
needs to come inside.
Yeah.
And some of them are considered technically, like when you look at cutting flower gardening, some of them are dirty flowers. So sunflowers are dirty flowers, daffodils are dirty
What does
flowers.
that mean?
That means that they tend to ooze a lot into the water, just from their stems. And so dirty flowers, you have to change that water more often, keep an eye on it. I don't put other more tender stuff in there with it, because it'll be like, oh, I can't get all the water I need, it's all so gunky. So anyway, but yeah, there's a whole nother arena as far as like cutting flowers and cutting beds go. And people can design whole beds or whole landscapes around that. They have structures and netting and things that you can put in so that you can grow big, amazing rows of all these fabulous flowers. If you're into that, look, it has become so popular now. So I would always say, a good stand by are the zinnias. They do amazing, they're beautiful in the yard, they're beautiful in the house, they're like my favorites.
I'd like to have that yard right there.
I know.
Yeah, I love
a tiny yard.
Yeah, I love that. little-
Sorry, Riley.
All is well.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? I saw your hand.
I do think if you have filtered water, that helps
Oh, yeah.
flowers
So,
fresh.
I bet
Rather
you're
than using tap water, water or distilled water helps flowers too.
Yeah.
Instead of using the tap water,
That's a very good point.
yes, the water stays clear a lot longer.
Interesting, yeah. I'll have to experiment with that.
I thought the iguana was the eggplant.
Oh.
Isn't there a Japanese eggplant?
There is
Like a
long and skinny ones. No, there's a
Yes,
variety, right?
Okay.
Japanese eggplants,
Yeah.
long and skinny eggplant.
I learned so much when I come here. I never knew you should not store apples with your potatoes.
Yeah, I didn't know that
Game
either.
changer.
Yeah,
That's good.
Potatoes. I always do that.
I heard onions and potatoes stuff going on.
Those two, yes.
Yeah.
So I could do that.
Is that because they have dirt?
So apparently they give off ethylene gas that make the potatoes, because mine always like grow on my
Yes.
counter. I'm like, why are you growing? You're supposed to.
Right, it encourages it, and the light maker do that too at first, but.
There are seeds back here that you can rummage through and take what you like. And then there are also seeds in bags that you can go ahead and use the teaspoon and put them in a little envelope And I need to probably get the tape if anyone decides to do that. And there's pens over here. So you're more than welcome to take what you like.
And Courtney is passing out evaluations. We'd greatly appreciate it if you fill those out. Do you have another question?
Is there any kind of like a social board or anything, like to swap plants or share plants at all?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say that there's a social board, but if we do plant swaps, which we do in the spring a lot of times with master gardeners, if we all have extra plants or we're digging up stuff, I can maybe put something together to let you guys know. Are you on my Friday newsletter list?
No.
Okay, you can sign up for that here, and then that way if we end up doing a plant swap, everybody on that list will know, the plant people will know, so that would be a good option.
Like
Or
I have
you can,
irises that I think that they haven't been taken care of, so
We have
I need to split too many for me.
Yeah.
yes,
So.
yes. I know, all of us gardeners need to find like unsuspecting innocents, you know, you're like, hey, you wanna try this? It's gonna be great. Because we all have some.
I do have a question. Do you have a resource for when your harvest is, can you share with food banks or whatnot? I mean, is that an option?
Right, I have found that in the last couple of years, they're a lot less likely to take stuff from individuals, so call ahead. And you may also wanna call places like the Pueblo Food Project, because maybe you can't donate to a food bank, but Pueblo Food Project puts on lots of cooking classes and things for the community at like low or no cost, and they can utilize that food possibly, or share it with people who come to visit them.
Food project?
Yes, Pueblo Food Project.
I also highly recommend Sister Nancy out in Avondale,
Oh, yeah.
El Centro de los Pobres, the Center for the Poor. She is amazing.
What is that?
Sister Nancy, she works out of, I think it's the Sacred Heart Church in Avondale. The Center for the Poor, El Centro de los Pobres. She accepts food donations and other donations. Yeah,
Oh, that's wonderful.
absolutely. Based off the current political climate, I'm unsure how like welcoming they are to visitors and everything, but you can find her on like Facebook. I think their website's on Facebook. And then this QR code takes you to the website for other resources and everything.